All right, welcome everybody to episode 54 of Mind Over Music. I'm your host, Sean Eli Molodina. I'm here with such an incredible special guest. Today's topic is on leadership, and we're going to be talking a lot about dynamics of leadership, creating agency within our own right. I have such an incredible guest, Andy Olen, who's a dear friend of mine. He's a podcaster, the sales warrior within. You can find him on all the socials at Andy Olen. He's also the author of the Trilogy of Yes, which the trilogy is communication, connection, and cooperation. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today. I'm so excited to have my dear friend Andy Olen join the show today. Andy, thank you so much for being here.
What a treat it's to be with you, Sean. Thanks so much for the invitation. Great to be here.
I love it. I love it. And I think that we're going to dive right into it. There's so much history and so much, so many conversations that you and I have both had. And the dynamic in which we're seeing leadership take place today within, the context of COVID-19, within the context of, an evolving economy, how brands are also changing and evolving their message to create agency within, not only their employees to engage them further, but how employees are also coming back in and retraining themselves, reskilling themselves for the future. How do you see, these corporations, how do you see individual agency kind of changing within this dynamic?
Yeah, well, first off, in business, which is where I've spent the last 20 years of my life in corporate America before I decided to become an entrepreneur and do my own thing and get closer to the things that I love to do. One of the most overused phrases in business is perfect storm. And it was almost like the excuse everyone would use if things were all of a sudden just going sideways, either in revenue, sales, market share. Oh, it's a perfect storm of events. And I've been through like 50 business perfect storms to know that perfect storms are really hard to find and they don't really exist that often. I do think it's fair to apply that term, though, to what we're going through today. Because it was nowhere on the radar screen. It was as if the storm of the pandemic came from nowhere and is going to be with us until we either get to herd immunity and or vaccine. At the same time, that created a catastrophic economic impact. We see inside of the pandemic how it impacts people of color and people in certain socioeconomic status different than others. And so you have all of that churning. And then you have, enabled by social media and the change that has come about by everyone carrying a personal computer with them and with a camera in terms of their phone, the ability to see the changes in social justice that have come along as well. And all of these things have come together at this time. And it really is, I think, both today and for many years to be studied as what does good leadership look like and maybe what doesn't good leadership look like. So really excited to be talking about this topic on leadership with you today in what I think we can agree is an appropriate use of the term and definition of perfect storm.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at how leadership is getting more and more decentralized,
Right.
And you're right. It's through things like social media platforms. It's through creating new skill sets. It's by training others. It's by giving of yourself in so many dynamic ways. And I think when we look at the foundations of how we approach this work, it is the same foundations that you have written about in your book, The Trilogy of Yes. Walk us through the 3 C's and how we can start incorporating the 3 C's within our leadership dynamic, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, great. Well, so really the motivation of the Trilogy of Yes is it's a book for salespeople. That's how it was written. And it was written on my 20 years of experience in business and also running political campaigns in my younger days. And what I saw that great salespeople did by habit, by practice, with discipline and purpose, is that when they met a new customer, for example, they were focused on building a strong connection. That connection accelerated trust. They were very disciplined in the communication styles and approach that they used to communicating with different people. And all of that led to cooperation, which is really part of our DNA. And cooperation allowed us to move as a society from the caves out to the prairies, if you will, where one person would stay up at night and keep the tribe safe while others would sleep. And that cooperation allows us to evolve even to this day. And so these very basic life skills of connecting with people, communicating and cooperating also translated into great sales skills and the and the ability for people to inspire customers to say yes. And I really am grateful that you see the connection too, that these life skills, these relationship skills are also great and needed society skills or societal skills to help us through challenging moments. And I like to think about it this way: is there two C's or two buckets of C's that you can pick from. One bucket is crisis, conflict, and chaos. That's a bucket of C's. That's an approach. It's a style. And you know what? Maybe in the short term, if you push someone hard enough and you push them with conflict and chaos, you can get your way. I just don't believe it's sustainable at any level. And then there's another bucket of C's that I wrote about in the Trilogy of Yes: connection, communication, and cooperation. That's sustainable. That's part of our DNA and our evolution. And it's applicable in our personal life, in our business life, and at a societal level as well.
Yeah, we look at the fundamentals of civil society and how we all get along. Right now, we're facing not only the challenges of COVID, we're facing so many intense political challenges. We're looking at the fabric of our civil society here in America. And, we're going to make a little bit of a transition into Black Lives Matter here.
Yeah.
And, you and I talked about this while we were preparing for the show. And it was, the constant disenfranchisement of different populations within, the United States, whether it is based on the color of your skin, whether it is based on your socioeconomics. Every chair that comprises the chairs or the seats around the table are not created equal. And some people, have chairs that are rickety, that break, that are designed to not be able to be sustainable at the table either. How do we create cooperation, when we look at these types of political structures? Because I feel like a lot of listeners today are looking at this show and they're looking at, information that we're passing back and forth here. And they're taking a political lens and saying, how do I create agency and leadership using the three C's, using the yes if? And we'll get into the yes if in a little bit, but how do we create more equality and equanimity around the seats around that golden table, which we call civil society in the United States?
Yeah, and just before I answer that, just disclaimer: my dogs, Kit and Blake, really wanted to be on your show, so they're trying their hardest to participate with us today. So thank you and your listeners.
No, it's good. Everybody wants to be on the show. It's good.
it's at a time. So
we're four-legged friendly.
Yeah, good. It's a great question, and if there was a simple answer, we probably already would have found it out and figured out how to make it happen. But it's not a simple answer, and because it's layered in history, it's layered in challenge, it's layered in power structures, it's and layered also in emotion. And one of the great, and I don't mean good by saying great, I mean in the terms of magnitude, one of the great powers that a lot of people have used in order to set up these structures has been fear. Mm-hmm. And you look at how leaders at some times in some parts of the world, in different countries, have used fear to galvanize nationalism or other things, to either dismantle a current social structure or to create a new one. But fear is an awesome power, and it sort of sits in that bucket of C's that I talked about: crisis, conflict, and chaos. Then creates the emotion of fear, and fear can be very powerful. And so I think part of what you have to do, and what a great leader does, these sort of things come together, is that instead of focusing on fear, you have to be focused as a leader in keeping the tribe feeling secure, and getting back to on an individual level, and then at a family level, at a neighbor level, a community level, and sort of work your way up. These ideas of cooperation, of going back to how we are literally wired. I mean, for cooperation, when we cooperate with others, our brain fires chemicals and neurons that says, this is good. This is how we're built to evolve and succeed and stay safe. And when we do the opposite of that, it tears away at it. So, there are a lot of different ways we can look at the seats at the table and the creation of them. But I think one of the big things we have to do, if we zoom out a little bit and we'll take the US as an example here, is, when's the last time we really sat down and thought about a constitution that serves us in the 21st century? There are a lot of countries. Yeah, there are a lot of countries that I think France is an example. Every 20, 30 years, they sit down and they have basically a constitutional convention to say, hey, is what we set up 20, 30 years ago working for us today? If so, let's keep going. If not, let's make those adjustments so we can continue to evolve and grow. South American countries do this. A lot of countries do it. But our democracy and the way that it was set up makes it very hard to change the really, if you want to talk about the biggest seats at the table, are the ones that are defined in the Constitution, the Supreme Court, members of Congress, how Congress sets the rules on how elections are run, or how the administration works, and where all these trillions of dollars go to. So I think it's time that we step back and say, all right, what's not a revolution that I'm calling for in any means, but an evolution of how we govern ourselves. Because what was great in 1776 and 1780 may not be really good in 2020 and 2021, because we're a very different place, I would imagine, than we were back a couple hundred years ago. So I think it really, the root for us is to get back to thinking about and having an open dialogue about what's the type of operating system or structure we want, i.e. a constitution that takes us into the future as an open, equal, and highly competitive society.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. This is such a brilliant point, which is looking at evolution versus revolution, and the safety that underpins evolution versus revolution. I think, you had mentioned this before. You said, powerful structures are designed by powerful people to keep powerful people in power.
Right.
And you look at that and you say, okay, well, how do we challenge that? And and you also mentioned, rather than trying to climb over that structure, just go around it. So talk to us a little bit about creating a place and kind of a level of cooperation where you can sustain it through ideas, through competitiveness, because the structure that's moving forward today is creating so much fragility within the United States. It's creating so much fragility within the power dynamics. And although you might be going tall, you're not stable at the bottom, right? The foundations are now cracking. And we're seeing that through, through supply chain and supply demand, dynamics here and globally as well. And we're saying, wow, we're not manufacturers anymore. We are, essentially passing along the buck, right? First came the slaves, and then once we freed the slaves, we said, who else can we enslave? So now we use manufacturing as a second form of capitalism and enslavement, to like China, for example, and they're creating agency and power with the dynamic that they have, and then it's going to go to robots and things of that sort. But I think you hit a very interesting point here in discussing and understanding and unpacking safety as it ties to civil society. Let's dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, and maybe let's talk about safety and security as one of the core tenets of good leadership, that the strong leader and the good leader keeps the group or the community feeling safe and secure. So let's think about this in terms of a binary black and white scenario, and then I'll apply it a little bit into the world of healthcare, which you and I both know well, and I can speak to with some level of intelligence. I think you can check me on that if not.
You got the credentials. We're good.
At the end of the day, if you wake up, and this is the binary version of it, if you wake up and you know that on that day you're not going to lose your healthcare. If your kids get sick, you have options to help them. If on that day you believe and are secure that no matter what your skill set is, you have a shot at getting a good paying job that's going to pay you a living wage, and you can work in an environment where you come home and shut your doors at night and no one's going to come in and bring an assault weapon in or something like that. I would say that the security blanket that you have waking up and going through your day with those assurances in society create a level of security that then allow you, instead of worrying and spending your calories and energy worrying about crisis, chaos, and conflict, I now can apply my energies to innovation, creativity, to my hobbies, to my habits, to my community, to giving back, or doing the absolute best job I can at work. So and it's a simple calorie counter almost, reducing the calories of anxiety and fear. And the more of that you have in a society, I would say the worse off, because you just spend more of your energy working on that. Then you have the ability to really amplify in the areas of creativity, innovation, exploration. And boy, wouldn't we all like to do that? But it starts with that feeling of waking up in the morning and say, my basic needs are covered.
Yes.
And so I think now if I zoom out a little bit, and I've had the chance to work all over the globe in different healthcare economies by working in medical devices. And I lived in Canada for a while, and everyone, sort of jokes, well, their healthcare system is a social system, and, you have to wait in line forever for it. But after experiencing that, and then South American healthcare systems as well, what I did see was that everyone woke up in the morning and went to bed at night knowing if they or a family member got sick, there would be care and it wasn't going to bankrupt them. And it created a level of social security, not the kind that we have in the US where it pays, a dividend into retirement, but a social security because it was part of the culture that when a basic need was taken care of and you knew it was there, you had the opportunity to flourish in another way. And that experience really brought it to life. So I think we could spend a lot of time thinking about ways to reduce chaos, crisis, conflict, amplify connection, communication, cooperation. And if we can spend time as a society thinking about ways to keep people feeling more safe, then let's do it. Let's connect that to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
The protesting and the organizing and the demonstrations that we're all a part of in one way or another, either actively or passively and watching, and many of us active in it, which is new and great. What it's saying is, I believe in part what it's saying is, we're not safe. We don't feel safe in this society. Hear our voice. We demand safety through justice, through protection, and not having to have a conversation with my kids in my house that because you're a young African-American male, let me tell you what you're going to do when you get pulled over by a cop and how you're going to behave. Because you know what? When I grew up, I never had that conversation with me. It wasn't part of my upbringing, but it is for so many. But that, at the end of the day is a function of people not feeling safe. So let's provide that social security of feeling safe in the society so we can flourish in the things that we're great at. And I think we're well on our way. Hard to do, easy to say, but what's so inspiring about the Black Lives Matter movement is, I think fundamentally, it really is addressing in a very powerful way and in a very needed way, this need for safety from police practices that have been systematically racist and targeted towards the African-American community and other communities for too long. And now that time is here to change, which is very inspiring to see.
Yeah, you look at the dynamics of civil society today, and you think about social safety networks like you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and you say, well, if I don't think a person wakes up in the morning is like, man, I can't wait to rob a house. I can't wait to do more crime. I think it's this systemic, problem, the systemic oppression that happens over and over again, because there is a lack of safety, and there is a lack of infrastructure, and there is a lack of safety on one side, and the other side is so scared that something is going to happen, because I think to a certain point, I think everyone understands what the oppression feels like on the other side, and they don't want to be oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you look at it and you're like, well, if somebody robs my house, for example, I've heard this a few times, and it's like, if somebody robs my house, I'm going to call the cops, right? But if there is no cops, who do I call? Well, that's how Black people feel. They can't call the cops because they don't have that. They don't have the police is not meant for them specifically. And let's say, for example, a mother of two children. One has a mental disability and is having an episode. She can't call the cops because the cops are probably going to kill her child. And so you look at this, you're like, man, like, we've got to do better in how we establish social safety and equanimity, because if we can get past a specific threshold, that is the only way that we can, make the tide rise all boats. And you go back and you think about it and you say, okay, if I can get people to become more creative, if I can get people to feel secure within society, I will not only make it safer, but I'll make it more innovative. I'll reinforce the reward of what capitalism really is designed to do, which is to reward people who with great ideas, great implementation, great management, and to further along the agenda of America being the country in the world that everybody wants to come to.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And interestingly, you look back at World War II and when we all did come together in this country to mobilize tax rates on the wealthiest Americans were north of 70%. And there may have been complaining about it. I wasn't there to see it at that time, but there was a shared sacrifice, and it was we're all in this, we're going to get through it, and we're all going to chip in, because once we get through it together, we can all prosper on the other side of it too. And I think one of the things that, if there was someone who didn't maybe feel the same way that you and I do about some of these topics, would say, well, what you're talking about is socialism. And I think we have to share a distinction. We're talking about social security and the creation of security in a society, and how that actually allows the individual, the family, the community, the neighborhood to rise up, because you just get to spend more of your time focusing on the things that you're good at and love. I fundamentally believe that every person is born with a very unique gift, and part of life's exploration is finding, discovering, and bringing that gift forward. For me, it's probably being able to get up in front of a group of people and take a complex subject and tell a story about it so people can understand it, and hopefully I persuade them along the way. And that's a refined talent that I think I do better than almost anyone in the world, if I may go to that place. But I believe everyone has that talent, that they are better than anyone else in the world, and life's journey is about finding it. And if you have more time to spend finding it, locating it, and then exploiting it for all the good that it is, versus worrying about how you're going to feed your kids, pay for healthcare, or just even make it to work during a pandemic, for crying out loud, or even have a job during this time, or be assaulted by police officers. If that's where you're spending your time, how much time are you spending cultivating that gift, that talent you have? And one of my passions is I just want people to feel safe, secure, so they can focus on that gem that's inside all of us and bring it forward and have happiness with it.
I love it. I love it. When you look at, the hat, the MAGA hat, Make America Great Again, and we kind of put yes if on top of that. It's Make America Great. We can all make America great again. Yes, if we have a proper social safety network that creates safety for everybody. So we're going to take a quick song break, Andy, and then we're going to go into a quick commercial break. But we're going to be playing Rage Against the Machine, Testify. Tell us what this song means to you. And it's so relevant to the topic.
I saw Rage for the first time, I think in 2000 at the Free Tibet Tour at Alpine Valley in Wisconsin. Had a chance to be backstage, met Tom Morello, who's from Libertyville, just north of Chicago. And I never really knew these guys, and I saw them, and I think it was this song that they dropped. And once this first beat kicks in, and that whole place, 20,000 people are doing this, it's in you forever. So
crazy. And I'm here with my very incredible, talented, brilliant, creative, I love this guy, man. Andy Olen is our guest today. We're talking about leadership. Andy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, great show. And I'm happy to be 54 and to the next successful 54 and more, my friend.
Amen. Amen to that. We just finished talking a little bit about, the political situation, Black Lives Matter, creating agency, a social safety network for others, really creating agency for others, and how we mindfully must to do this in order to protect our own creativity, protect our own civil society, and to protect our own safety. And I think this is kind of the idea. When we look at like the First Amendment, that's what it is. We came here, the first Americans came here, or the people that kicked Native Americans out came here from England for religious freedom. And it was freedom of speech. It was, the right to bear arms. All of these things kind of come together to ensure that we have a creative process, that we have, these unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want to transition a little bit, and I want to start getting into the communication, the connection, the creativity of cooperation itself. And I think the best way to do that, as you mentioned, and you have a TED Talk on it, which was an incredible talk, and I watch it. I probably watched it like 7 or 8 times already. It's the yes if strategy, and if you guys hashtag yes if, you can pretty much get in contact with Andy Olen just by hashtagging yes if. He's probably watching it like a hawk as well. But it's the term that you've coined yourself, and it's such a brilliant negotiation tactic. Why don't we go into yes if and how we can create agency through yes if?
Yeah. So let me tell you what yes if is first, and give you a little bit of context, and then into agency. So yes if is a negotiation style, cooperative negotiation style, where I can say yes to every one of your requests if you're willing and ready to trade value back and forth with me. That's yes if. And when I talk about bringing together connection, communication, cooperation, communication, yes if, 5 letters, 2 words, 1 phrase, and it will change the whole way that you negotiate. And it has for me, it has for the folks that I've sold with, and it has for me as a parent, it has for my friends and family as well, and for those that really believe in it. And it sounds like this, right? Is that yes, I can give you that discount on a product if you buy 2. Yes, I can give you free shipping if you sign the deal today. Those are the business applications. And parenting, yes, you can go play with your friends after dinner if your homework is done. For your own sort of self-agency, yes, I can indulge in the family dinner tonight if I get my exercise in and do some intermittent fasting during the day, right? So yes, if is really a trading mindset. And where it came from for me was I found myself in these big material, multi-million-dollar healthcare negotiations, and I just kept acquiescing and giving value away. That whenever every time the customer would ask for something, I would just simply say yes to try to be liked, to not to be judged. I didn't want to disappoint or lose the deal. And what I realized was I was giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars, not getting anything back in return. And so I needed, if I wanted to have a long-term sales career, I needed to change my negotiation approach. And I remember that as a kid, I grew up with my friends and we traded baseball cards with each other. And when there was a card I needed to complete a set or a favorite player on a favorite team, we get together and we would put our cards on the table and we trade them back and forth until the value of the trade was beneficial to both.
Right.
And so by applying the simple mindset in a negotiation, either a simple one or a complex one, either a small dollar one or a material one, a parenting one or a friendship one, you can get everything, you can give the person everything they want if they also are willing to trade value with you. And that's yes if. It's so simple, yet it's so impactful, and it lives and it breathes and it operates on the individual level, the family level, the parenting level, the personal, the friend level, and also in the business level. And at the business level, and I also believe it's a great structure that we have to get back to at a societal level to be able to take on the problems that we face today and the challenges. We can yes if you make it a verb, you can yes if your way to any solution and create truly win-win outcomes.
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you use this strategy, when you use this tactic, and you look at how to create a closer connection with the person that you're negotiating with. Yes, if could be fun, right? One example that you had written way back in the day was with one of your friends that needed help moving, and he said, Andy, will you help me move, my couch or whatever it was? And you're like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
if there's going to be pizzas and beer. Right.
Yes.
And so you make this fun exchange. And that's another thing in our creative processes is having fun with it. It's not just learning and sharpening your saw and then using your saw as an axe, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
using your tools in a creative, almost surgical way, but still having fun, still finding joy within the process of negotiation, within the process of connection and communication and cooperation. And so, I think when we look at these tools that we're constantly working on, that we're constantly putting into our tool belt, how do we look at, sharpening our saw, establishing what we want, and then finding clarity through some of the challenges that face us in our lives. There's such a huge issue now. There's such a huge problem. There's a gap in creativity today. And with
Mm-hmm.
COVID, we've gotten this opportunity to establish whatever our creative process might be. And it's still challenging for so many people. And, you wrote a book, right? You wrote the trilogy of yes. And I'm sure that was fun and creative, but there were some challenging times to it as well. So how do we use, this time to kind of get through this, sometimes it could be a mosh pit of creativity or just this gap that we're looking at today.
Well, I think, and tying it back to some of the challenges we have here, I look at the way people are creating social media content on their own or with others that sort of take them through this moment, this journey. And some of that content, and, some of as the frontline healthcare workers were dealing with COVID and the first waves were going through the Northeast and elsewhere, there were these very lighthearted moments captured on a camera and posted or even edited a little bit of nurses and healthcare workers doing a certain TikTok dance or something like that to just for a moment get back to humanity while there was such a a horrible event to humanity sitting in their ICU or in their emergency department. That's a creative outlet, and social media and technology enable that. In a different way, this how cameras and phones and content have created awareness for the Black Lives Matter movement. Unfortunately, it's taken tragedy to create that, but the amplification through social media and some of the creative things that have come out, and even for people that choose not to cooperate with this and be aware of and take a moment of selflessness in this moment. There are terms and creative terms like a Karen, right, that we see on social media that's been created, and it's very creative in the way that it's portrayed is aiding this movement along. So I give people a lot of credit that in tough times, there's been a tremendous amount of creativity. Another world, in the political campaign world, you're seeing really creative political content. Sarah Cooper, who takes President Trump's words and then she creates just a voiceover, or not even an ad lib of that, and does it her way, is super creative. And she just does that herself. And that creates agency. So I think actually, though the moment is tough, the times are pulling out some super creativity using technology, and the amplification of it is hitting people around the world like it could never have been done through old channels like television or radio or print or whatever it may be. So I'm pretty bullish and optimistic that technology plus creativity and people feeling free to express themselves is going to be one of the great shining moments out of this time.
And that is what leadership fundamentals really looks like, right? It is when you are creating agency through communication, connection, and cooperation, through yes, if. These are the things you don't have to be in a specific position to do so. The most beautiful thing about leadership is it's decentralized. Anyone can step up and be a leader at any point. And you don't have to be, recognized as a leader by a corporate structure. You don't have to be recognized as a leader in your community to begin doing things that are leadership like, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is just literally changing your perspective. It's changing your own engagement. It is creating that connection. It's creating that communication. And you look at this and you're saying, okay, well, today I can stand up and be the leader that I want to be by just learning these little skills, valuing communication, connection, cooperation, and then establishing and putting this yes if rule on top of it. And then you can use that in your tool belt to kind of implement into any part of your creative process, your political process, whatever you want to accomplish. By doing this, you're going to have more people and you're going to give more agency. One thing about agency, and I love using that word, and this is what this show is really all about, is how to give and create and be a sounding board for agency. How to be more inclusive so that we, share and create equity among others. But the people who give agency, they're not earning agency themselves. They're earning agency by giving agency immediately. And it's this process that kind of perpetuates on itself. There's this game that I used to play, Andy, when I was a kid, and it was a spoon that was tied to the end of a meter stick. And maybe you should play this with your family. And in the middle is a bowl of M&Ms. And everyone has a cup in front of them. And what they do is they take that spoon, and that M&Ms in the middle represents respect. And what you do is you try to take as many M&Ms as possible, and you try to put it in your own cup. What you realize is it's nearly impossible to bend your elbow and get it back far enough because you can't move your position in your seat. And so what you do is you give respect, and automatically you gain respect from other people. And I think that's what underpins the yes if strategy. I think that's what underpins the trilogy of yes. And I think that's how we should look to establish and sharpen our skills when we think about leadership fundamentals.
Yeah, love what you're saying there, and you're right. And the word I've used throughout the book, or even in Yes If, is the power of reciprocity. And that when I give you a gift, human nature says I'm in some way, because I want to, I'm obligated. I want to give back to you as well. The only way for me to get an M&M is that I give you the M&M first. Great, famous famous in the world of negotiation study of servers and servers giving mints to their customers and then looking at what happens to the tip that's given. When the check is given, no mint, 15% tip. When the check is given, a gift of a mint, 18% tip. When I leave you the check, the mint, I turn around and I walk back and I say, you know what, Sean, you've been a great customer of mine. Here's a second mint for you. Tip is 21%. You give back and reciprocate the gift of the mint through the act of tipping. And
Right.
so yes, if is that, yes, I will give you what you want. And a lot of people say, well, no one's under an obligation to give you back something, but they always do. Because that's how we're wired, because it's going back to those core tenets, as you said, of connection, communication, cooperation, back to the things that helped us evolve to where we are today. So, and I think there's a great lesson in there is that in this movement, the pandemic and the economic impact and the push for social justice, that if we take the mindset that I will give to my neighbor, I'll give to my community, I think we can be pretty safe in assuming my neighbor and my community will give back to me too. We just have to trust each other again to do that, break down the barriers of tribalism. And if you want agency for your listeners today, start to negotiate using yes, if, and trade value back and forth and prove to yourself through what can be a complex or uncomfortable or conflict-filled negotiation, turn it all around, use cooperation. Yes, I can do this for you. If you can do that for me, and you watch, it will be reciprocated to you. And by doing that, by giving, you have also created agency for yourself.
I love it. I love it. Andy, we're going to take one more quick song break, and then we're going to come back and wrap it up. And I want to talk about, the message of hope. And I know that you always conclude with this quote of "you are up to you." So we're going to get right back into that in just a few moments, but we're going to play another fun song chosen by Andy from Rush. This is Tom Sawyer. Everybody enjoy.
There you go.
Rock on. And
yes.
You look at all the things that you've accomplished in such a short period of time. You authored the Trilogy of Yes. You have your own podcast. You have so much agency within yourself. You've been in the big boardrooms. You've signed multi-million dollar, tens of millions of dollars of deals, maybe billions, right? That have kind of come through your desk. You look at how others can start creating that agency. You look at the approach that you've taken to civil society and how you've been a political strategist as well. You look at all this culmination of experience, and you look back at your life and say, man, this was fun, this was creative, this was great. Talk to me about your message of hope that you want to give to others, and maybe we begin with how you created your agency first, and then we move to that message of hope, and kind of look at how everybody can start changing their perspective to kind of follow the same road here, because it's been trailblazed.
Yeah. So I think the first piece of advice I give, no matter what the topic is, if something doesn't feel right to you, just trust your gut. It probably isn't right. And I'll give you a story. It was really sort of I guess you can say it was the straw that broke my corporate back. Spent 17 years in, Fortune 500 companies and tremendous friendships and learning experiences. However, my last company, I was with the CEO, 7:30 in the morning, about to start a long marathon day. And I turned to him, over the Danish and all the unhealthy food that's on the buffet table to start a boardroom meeting day. And I said what probably any normal person would say. I said, "How are you?" And the answer I got back, I didn't expect. And he looked at me in the eye with all seriousness and said, "Does it really matter?"
Wow.
And it was that moment I said, I'm going to take agency by writing myself my offer letter to start my own company. And in that offer letter, I'm going to tell myself, my future self, when I step into it in June of last year, I'm going to tell myself, these are the values. This is the mission. This is the focus. This is the giving back. And because when I heard that, does it really matter? I think my reaction was, yes, it does matter. And I thought to myself, I'm no longer cut out for this. And I made the decision to retire from that part of my career I still work with a ton of great corporate clients. I love them. They're great. There's so many great progressive companies out there, and the great ones are going to work their way through these challenging times and flourish. But when you feel something is adrift, listen to your gut, and that's going to be the moment to start the process of claiming, reclaiming, or taking agency for yourself. So that's just a very fundamental thing, is trust your gut. Living in this world teaches you so much. You have the experience. If something doesn't feel right, on the other side of that's going to be agency.
I love it. I love it. And I think it takes a level of bravery, right? When somebody else says, does it really matter? For you to come back and say, it's the only thing that matters. It's literally the only thing that matters. That takes so much courage and also experience too, because there's some people that are willing to sell their souls for, whatever short-term, long-term gain they feel like is going to happen in their mind. And sometimes that never comes. And so, kudos to you for taking that agency and establishing what you feel will be joy. And it has its challenges too. Let's talk about the philosophy of you are up to you. I
Mm-hmm.
love how you end your all of your sessions, all of your
Yeah.
the work that you do, because you coach so many people. It always ends on this lesson, and I would love for you to share it with our audience.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. You are entirely up to you, and it probably sort of sits in that same category of, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't teach it how to, and you can teach it how to drink, but is it really going to drink? You don't know. I just totally mangled that, but you know what I mean. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't teach it to drink necessarily. But you know what? When I work with people, I'll share with them the tips and the tricks on how to connect and establish trust, be it in a business or a personal setting, how to communicate effectively, be it yes, if, or which pronouns you're using at different times, how you can show empathy and authenticity, and then how you cooperate and how important that is. And so I can show the roadmap, I can give the examples, but then at the end of the session, I have to turn the keys to the car or that wisdom over to the other person that's consuming it, and give them the challenge and the call to action to now take it forward. And what's exciting is, if you've communicated well, if you have connected as a trainer or coach, as a thought leader with other people, and they believe and it's simple to do, they're going to do it. And so much of my entrepreneurial journey now, being a year out of corporate America, has been the joy in hearing and seeing people become entirely up to themselves. You are entirely up to you to take agency for yourself, is just an extension of the same phrase. And so what I do, what you do, if that leads to people taking on with confidence and empowerment, that self change that becomes neighborhood, family change, and community, society change, then darn it, I'm pretty optimistic about where we're going.
Yeah, it's this perpetual return of what you give, right? If you give negativity, you'll get negativity back. If you give positivity, you'll get positivity back. If you give power, you'll get power back. If you give agency, you'll get agency back. If you give, empowerment, you'll receive empowerment. So this is kind of that whole idea of you're up to you, but you have to figure out what that is. And I think it's so important to understand who you are in front of the mirror, because that is the person that is going to be reflected to you over and over again. What you pull from other people is extremely important. And the more focused you are, the more specific you are, and the types of conversations that you have, the types of, subjects, whatever it is that you want to pull from the other, that's the muscle that you're going to constantly strengthen. So be mindful of that. I think that's really important. Andy, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Sorry, did you have anything?
Yeah, and just start with the small things. A yes, if, turning on your Facebook Live, listening to the show, sharing the show, something small creates agency, and that seed grows. And so that gives me, again, so many great reasons to be optimistic, and it's just been a joy to be here, Sean.
I love it. I love it. And Andy, we're gonna send you off with an amazing song. "Here Comes the Sun" by the Beatles. One of the songs that gives me so much hope as well. Andy, I can't wait to have you back here in the next few weeks. Hopefully not too long, just to let us know what you're up to, your entrepreneurial journey as well, and how things are going for you. There's so many things happening politically that I would love to go further in and dive in with you. So can't wait to have you back.
Thank you, my friend. And it's great to be with you and your listeners. Thanks so much.
All right. And "Here Comes the Sun." Enjoy. Perfect. That was
That was
good.
fun, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.